How's it going, my friends? It has been over a year since I decided to pick up a KTM 500 EXC-F for use as my next dual sport motorcycle. I'd like to take a little bit of time and share with you my thoughts on how the experience has been so far. So the machine has 138.3 hours on it, runtime total, and 4,643 miles on the odometer. So the question is, did I make the right choice choosing the 500 as my dual sport machine? And the short answer is yes. I'm very happy with this thing. It's doing exactly what I wanted it to do. My main criteria when I set out to choose my next bike was that I wanted a high performance dirt bike experience. And of course, it's no secret, the KTM enduro bikes, they are high performance dirt bikes. I was coming off of a 2019 Honda CRF 250L, and that bike was a slug. It's heavy for a 250cc machine. It's slow, it's low on power, the suspension is soft, so the riding experience is just, it was lackluster for me. And they're great bikes, don't get me wrong. Honda's a great brand, love Honda. Those are great machines, absolutely great machines, but they're not a thrill ride for, you know, people who might have, say, an above average appetite for thrill, right? And because of that, I had to get rid of it and I had to move on to something else. Now, if I could have 10 bikes in my garage, then that would be different. But anyways, for those of you out there that are trying to figure out which dual sport bike you want, which is why you might be watching this video, the way I see it, there's two main categories of the dual sport bikes. You have your low performance and your high performance, right? The low performance bikes, these are going to be the Yamaha XT250, the Kawasaki and Honda 300s. Kawasaki also has a 230. You got the Suzuki DRZ 400, and now they have the 4S, which I suspect is still going to fall into that low performance category, even though it looks quite improved. I haven't ridden one yet. The suspension looks a lot better. They've made some improvements and modernized it, but I think it's still going to be a little bit on the lackluster side, but that's just speculation. Then you have your high performance bikes, right? You have the KTM, Husqvarna Gas, whether it be 350 or 500. You've got the Beta bikes. They've got a couple versions. You've got Sherco. You've got the Honda CRF 450 RL. Might be some others I'm missing, but those are kind of your high performance dual sports. They come from kind of the more thoroughbred background of either motocross or enduro bikes, and they've just adapted them with whatever necessary components to make them street legal. So for me, I kind of tend to prefer that second category. And I think I could have been happy with any of those bikes, but I never owned a KTM. I wanted to try a KTM, so I went with it, and I'm very happy with it. It's been a great bike. It's a lot of fun. So let's talk reliability. This is a very controversial subject when it comes to KTM. Matter of fact, there is so much KTM hate out there on the internet and just out there in general. I was a little bit spooked to buy one because there's just so many people that are going to tell you that it's a bad idea, and it's a little bit controversial, and here's why. Right, you can look at like the 790 and 890s, for example. People have been reporting a lot of issues with those bikes. I've never owned one. I cannot confirm or deny, but based on the internet, you might be a little bit sketched, right? But from everything that I've researched and from my personal experience with this 500 is that the enduro bikes don't have those problems. And so in over 4,000 miles and like almost 140 hours, the only issue I've had on this bike is the clutch dampers went out at about 80 hours. And they didn't go completely out, they just started to fail. And what happened was my clutch engagement started to fade. And what I mean by that is where the felt engagement and disengagement with respect to where you're pulling the lever, it changed substantially. And basically my clutch got a lot softer, and I had to kind of dig into that and figure out what was going on. And I didn't know if I had a leak somewhere in the system, if the slave cylinder was failing. A lot of people, I got these planes. Oh, look, he's doing flips, man. He's doing multiple flips. I need to get up there on one of those. Look at this dude. Anyways, the slave cylinder will fail and these will leak, and that can cause problems in the hydraulic portion of the system. But I did check the fluid. It was super dirty, but that wasn't the problem. I ended up pulling up the cover and I found that my dampers were worn, and that was causing excessive play in the basket, which was affecting the feel. And once I changed those out, I put the Recluse DDS option in there, and that corrected the problem. So that was the only mechanical failure I've had on the bike thus far. So I'm not seeing the problem at this point. I understand the bike is still young, the miles are still low, hours are still relatively low, but you know, so far this bike has been pretty dang good. One other thing I can mention is that I went to change the coolant recently, and these caps are apparently notorious for being difficult to get off. I didn't really have difficulty removing it, but once I went to reinstall it, I was kind of fiddling around trying to get that compress and twist thing going on, and there's an O-ring type gasket inside the cap, and somehow I managed to split it in half on the radiator when I was trying to put it back on. And they don't sell those O-rings separately, so I had to buy a whole cap, and that was kind of dumb. But I don't know if it was my fault or if it's a design flaw, probably a combination of both, but be aware of that. You could run into that issue if you go to change your coolant. And what else? I know some people are reporting having their fuel boil over because apparently these tanks are getting really hot off the engine, which I'll put it to you like this. Okay, I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I've been riding this bike in triple-digit temperatures during the day. And like when I'm commuting from work, for example, I'll get home and I'll park the bike in the garage, and I'll come out a half hour later and I can still hear the vent hose hissing. So that fuel is getting hot, and I do see some kind of movement going on around this area of the tank here with the fuel kind of bubbling. I'm not sure if that's coming from the fuel pump or it's a boiling action, but I have not had it boil over because I've stopped at fuel stations, you know, in the summer while out riding, while it's triple digits, and I haven't had fuel come spraying out. I know that's happened to people over the years with the KTM bikes. Hasn't happened to me, so I don't know what's going on there. I can't confirm or deny, but it does seem like the fuel is getting hot. It is venting a lot. And I do see some kind of movement action going on in there. So I'm just trying to think of things that are bad, you know, to kind of report to you guys. And that's all I've got so far. Got clutch dampers, tore the gasket. The fuel seems to get a bit hot. So those are some things to be aware of. What else do we got? Okay, the ECU, you're gonna have to address that. That is a problem in the countries, the so-called democratic countries of the world, especially for those of you that live here in the land of the not so free. And honestly, I could go on a big rant about that, but it's your fault. If you're one of those people that lives in the United States, it's your fault that we have these stupid ECUs and a heavily restricted engine. So get off your butt and get involved, man. Come on. So you're gonna have to account for that. If you buy one of these bikes, you gotta do the ECU. I've got underneath the seat, there is an Athena Get SX1 down there. I've done deleted some components off of the engine there, and you gotta do your exhaust. I went with the Pro Moto Billet end cap from Fastway. This is a Takamoto version. I've got the bronzed end and the black kind of cap that goes into the muffler there. Looks nice. But you've got to do the two. You can't do the exhaust or the ECU by itself on these KTM bikes. You have to do them together in order to get the proper performance. Otherwise, you're going to have problems. You got to do them both at once. So budget for that. Be aware of it. And once you do it, and I also remove the intake reeds, which are behind your air filter in here. You pull the reeds out, do the ECU, do the end cap. You're going to get about 20 horsepower and about 10 foot-pounds of torque. I've got a video of that with this bike on the dyno. I'll put the link in the description below. So again, reliability issues, you've got those. Valves, people talk about valves. I've been checking the valves on these pretty much on schedule, no deviation. I've got videos on that. I'll put the links in the description. Valves are solid so far. Oil change intervals, that's gonna be an important one. People are gonna be considering that when they're getting a dual sport or thinking about adventure riding. On these bikes, the manual's recommending like 620 miles or 10 hours. So if you're riding at a professional level, if you're a hardcore advanced rider, you're racing, that's probably true. I have been sending out oil samples to Blackstone Laboratories to verify this. And so far, the response I've gotten back is that around 1,200 miles and let's say 30 hours, my oil is still good, okay? I'm not racing the bike. I'm not riding it as hard as I can all the time. So we'll consider that medium duty because I do get on it. I do some romping around, some good riding. I'm mostly cruising, taking it easy, but you can extend your oil change intervals quite a bit, and I'm gonna continue to test that. I've got videos on that. I'll put the links in the description. So we'll continue to follow up on that. But that's kind of, I don't know if I'll call it myth busting, but you can go longer on the oil. The valves are solid on these bikes, and overall the reliability is pretty good from what I can see so far. All right, so tires also deserve a little bit of commentary here. So these bikes from the factory come with a Continental Twin Duro TKC 80 on them. And the majority of the people that I hear feedback from these tires on is not good. They don't like them. Some riders have even gone as far as saying as soon as they buy the bike, they change the tires immediately. And I get it, you know what I mean? But here's my take. I'm the oddball on this. I don't mind the tires, and there's two reasons for that. Number one, again, I'm dual sporting the bike. I'm racking up a lot of miles on the pavement, and from a budgetary perspective, I was just a little bit concerned to just go out and buy some more knobby tires and just chew them up quickly. And I mean, these tires are already on there, so why not run them till they drop? But then there's part two, where having rode the tires for 4,000 miles, I haven't found them to be that bad. I mean, realistically, in the gravel like you see here, no, they don't do good. You squirm around like crazy. They don't do good in sand. They're not gonna perform well in mud. If you're doing, you know, gnarly, loose hill climbs, they're not gonna be great. But overall, where I live in the Southwest desert climate, these tires have been, I mean, I'm just not bothered by them most of the time. I go out riding, I'm not really thinking about it a lot of the time. And matter of fact, I was out at Moab recently at the Dusty Lizard event, and several people came up to me when they saw my bike and were like, "You're still running those tires on there? You're gonna ride those out here?" And I was just like, "Yeah, I'm gonna." And it was my first time riding a dirt bike out in Moab, and I was pleasantly surprised how well they performed out there. These tires did just fine on solid rock. And I'm really not that shocked by it ultimately, because more surface area is going to be more traction on rock, right? So they did well, and they consistently do okay. So no, they're not an off-road performance tire, but if you're a dual sport rider, that's one of those areas you kind of have to, you know, make one of those tough decisions on. Are you going to have a tire that's truly a dual sport tire, or are you going to put an off-road bias tire? I see a lot of guys that get these bikes and they're dual sports, but they totally off-road their bikes, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, you know, you got to be aware of that. Like, are you riding your bike to the riding spot, or are you trailering your bike out to the riding spot? So, you know, if you've got the wallet and the bank account to, you know, buy tires a few times a year, go for it. Put your knobbies on there. But I'm not that bothered by these tires. I thought they were pretty good. All right, so let's talk mods. I already mentioned the ECU, opening up the exhaust, and the components you got to clean up around the engine there. So what was the first thing I had to do on this bike? Skid plate. All right, I've got the Acer Bis skid plate on there. Now this is a crime against humanity. KTM sends these bikes out of the factory, these base model 500 EXC-Fs, without a skid plate. Now if you get a Champions or a 6 Days, they put a skid plate on it, right? And with some of the enduro bikes, like the hard enduro, they put skid plates on them. but the base model 500 EXC-F does not have a skid plate. That is ridiculous. I don't know who in Pierre Mobility Group decided that that was a good idea for their marketing campaign to try and separate their premium models, but that is just stupid. Surely they can do something else to make those bikes more premium other than the skid plate, okay? There's a bunch of other stuff they put on those bikes to separate them, but man, that's a sore spot for me. These bikes should have skid plates. The Husqvarna FE501S base model has a skid plate. The Gas ES500 does not. It's the same thing for the 350s. So anyways, that if you get one of these bikes, you're gonna need to get a skid plate right away. So be ready for that. And then these Acerbis Z-Mud fork guards. Those cover up your fork seals and protect from dust and debris to get in there. That's just cheap insurance. Do that. Pretty much everyone that uses those have good opinion on them, and the overall consensus is that it reduces leaking seals and fork seal failure. So boom, boom, you're gonna need to do those. What else did we do? Oh, with the ECU, in my particular instance, I also went with the SX1 controller here. And that's nice. You get your two pre-selected maps. I think on mine, map 1 is the race map, map 2 is the enduro map. You've got quick shift function and traction control, and you have your ability to vary the traction control level within that. I also went with Takomoto's Tidy Tail Lighting Bundle. Part of that is the Slim Fit controller here, which gives me the ability to turn the headlight all the way off, low beam, high beam, and then your other standard controls, turn signal. Comes with the LED turn signals up front. There's some stuff going on behind the headlight mask there that comes with that. And of course you have your tail light, which is a brake light and turn signal combined. And I went with the enduro plate all in one. So we've got that. Let's stay up here. We've got the mirrors. I went with the double takes. When I started out, I had the ram mount arms that were like the 3.5 inch. And I liked those because of the profile was short. But I found that when I was on the road with traffic, I didn't like my field of view and my visibility. But I run them for like over a year, and eventually the balls for the ram mount started to fail and crack and deform. And then while I was at the Dusty Lizard recently, I upgraded to these double take arms, which are, I got the mid-length version and their new ball, and I really like the mid-length. I feel like when I'm on the road, I've got way better visibility with those. So that's a personal preference, but I like the longer arms because I like having the mirror when I'm on road. I can flip them out of the way when I'm off road, so that's where I'm at on that subject. Let's see, what else had to happen for me? The fuel tank. I went with the larger 3.1 gallon Acerbis fuel tank. For me, that's just a must. I like the feel of the stock tank. It's nice and slim, but I go on big rides and I'll do 100 miles in a day like nothing. So having that additional range is necessary for me. While we're talking about the fuel tank, I also did the reflective tape mod, and this kind of chimes back into that fuel boiling over thing with the reliability earlier. I just went ahead and got in front of that issue. Again, I didn't have a problem with it, but I decided to have that extra layer of insulation on there. I basically put tape on the entire inside where this cradles the frame. I put this aluminum foil reflective tape to shed a little bit of heat and reflect it from the tank. All right. I also got a custom graphic from Takomoto. I call this Forerunner. It's kind of a digital mountainscape theme. Looks sick, not necessary, but decided to do that. I have a capacitor. This is a start capacitor or a run capacitor from Takomoto. This is in the event that your battery fails on you out on the trail. You've got some stored electrical energy inside of that capacitor to help you start it. What else do we got? We've got the True North Moto luggage rack. I decided to go with a luggage rack because I wanted a little bit more structure back here when I decided to put luggage on. And their racks are cool because they've got some versatility. Like for example, you see some of the mounting positions here for a Rotopax fuel tank. You could just simply put a tail bag on top. Of course, you don't need it. You can run rackless system. And I'm gonna get back to that. I've got some Moscow bags I'll show you guys here in a minute, but I wanted the rack to keep stuff off of the fender and off of the further from the exhaust, and I like the rack, so I went with it. Also got the Seat Concepts Comfort Low seat. I went with the low because I'm not very tall, and I was on my tippy toes to begin with. I'm still on my tippy toes with this bike, which is something people need to consider. These are tall bikes. These KTMs are just some of the tallest bikes in the category, and I'm used to it. I've been riding bikes that were too tall for me since I was a child, so it's kind of second nature for me, but I went ahead and took the step to try and get a little bit more there. Didn't really change it much because once you get the wider seat, it kind of spreads your legs out unless you're way up on the front. So it was kind of a wash, but I got the wider bit, so if I'm on the highway or something, I can kind of scoot back and benefit from that wider seat. You know, I really didn't mind the stock seat that much, and I am kind of the wild card on this because pretty much everyone I talk to hates that stock seat from the moment they touch it. And while it's not great, I found that I can ride all day on that seat without issue. Now, where the problem comes in is if you're riding 2 or more days in a row. And I mean full days. Like if I'm just commuting to work and I'm riding my bike to and from work, the stock seat was fine, right? But if you're riding, say, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, on day 2, you're gonna start to feel chafed on that stock seat. But, you know, I'm kind of the wild card on that. I'm able to ride that seat all day and not have a problem with it. So I think we've covered all of the mods that I have done here, except my phone holder. I've got the Ram Mounts Quick Grip phone holder, which has been good so far. You know, people got different opinions on these phone holders, but I've had that one in moderate terrain, I'll say, on some pretty chunky stuff, and it's held my phone so far. I mean, I haven't done any back flips or front flips with it on there, so I don't know how that'll go, but it's been holding on to the phone, so I'm okay with that. And then let's go ahead and pop the luggage on here just so you guys can see it, because for one, it looks sick, and for two, I got it, so that's part of the game. So let's take a look at the bike with the Moscow Reckless 40 on it. So I've got the knoblin system on here. So what that consists of is this little kind of horseshoe shaped retainer. And there's a like knob or cleat on that top rack that it mates up to. So let's show you guys how easy this is real quick. So, of course, I'm gonna fiddle around with it. It's easy. All right, get that snapped in there. Tighten that little screw down. And you come over to your straps here. I've got these retaining cleats for the straps there. Pop that in, snug it up, fold the excess over. What is this, a Moscow commercial? No, I paid full price for these guys. But, you know, I have looked at other luggage, and Moscow is very nice. I probably go out and say it's the nicest luggage, but I'm not the final authority on that because I don't have enough experience with the other brands, but I have tried some other stuff. And these Moscow bags are very nice. Yeah, you're gonna pay for them, but the quality is pretty dang good, and look at how easy this was to get on. I'm in the final stages over here on the other side. Boom, now my Moscow bags are on the bike retained. So I think that's kind of everything. We've mentioned, you know, the bike is fun, the bike is thrilling. We talked about reliability. It really only had one issue with the bike, being the clutch dampers. We talked about the mods I've done. It's a pretty cool bike, man. What else? When the bike is stock, let's talk about top speed on the highway. No, it's not a great highway bike, it's a dirt bike. But stock, totally bone stock, I had this bike up to, I think, 101 miles per hour, and it was like, that was all it would do. After I put the ECU on, opened up the exhaust, did the intake reads, I did a pull on the bike and I took it up. I hit 106 and then I hit the rev limiter. Like unexpectedly. I actually thought it was going to pull farther because it was pulling so nice. I was like, oh, we're going to hit 110, 115. Boom, hit the rev limiter. And basically what that tells me is that's the stock gearing, because I've got the 1448 gears. So once you unlock the bike, it will probably hit 110, 115. It depends on the gearing. Okay, with the stock gearing, I'm hitting 106 and then I hit the rev limiter and I'm done at that point. But yeah, the bike will do 100 miles per hour. It's not great on the highway. You can do it. But that's, for a dual sport, that'll get you by. That'll get you by on the freeways and the highways as you need to. But if you're gonna spend hundreds of miles on the highway, you know, that's where you gotta start to kind of understand, again, your use case. Are you really a dual sport guy? Or do you need an adventure bike, that sort of thing? But, you know, we can go on and on and on, you guys. I'm sure there's some things I've missed or glanced over. So hit me up in the comments. I'll answer your questions if I can there, or do a follow-up video as necessary. But so far, for 1 year, almost 140 hours, over 4,000 miles, this is a really cool bike, man. It is so fun to ride. Very enjoyable. I'm happy with it. I would do it again. I would buy another KTM. It's a cool bike. So for those of you that are out there looking, give it a serious consideration. Just understand where you are, understand what you're trying to do, and you should be able to make a pretty good choice. So you know what to do from there. Give the video a like, subscribe to the channel. If you think it'll help anybody out, maybe give it a share. I'll see you in the next one.